Who's winning? And who's up shit creek without a paddle? This is your stop for unbiased election projections with BS free talk, analysis, and one cranky politico's insight into the very future of the world you live in. Broadcasting from the gateway to the motherlode in Waterford, California. This is the Election Recon Podcast. And now, he's carpet-bombing partisan zealots back to the Stone Age by delivering cold, hard reality to the fanatics first class. Your host, Army veteran, political operative, and election junkie, Josh Whitfield.
And welcome to episode 7 of the Election Recon Podcast. Episode 7. We took a week off, Alyssa.
We did.
That's Alyssa, the official co-host of the Election Recon Podcast. The most apolitical person I've ever met in my life. But is my assistant in the real world, not the fake world that is social media, YouTube, and the podcast sphere. I'm a little down. I am not feeling well. Mm-hmm. Last week we were going to do the podcast. I was going to do it from New York. I went to New York for a wedding for my stepsister-in-law. I think that's right. It's complicated. My wife's side of the family. So is my side of the family, actually. but it's my stepsister-in-law got married. Someone who I have grown very affectionate for over the years, someone who I have great respect, someone like us who is a public servant. There's a little island called Roosevelt Island right off of Manhattan and Brooklyn and I don't know, somewhere like in the middle of the Hudson River. It's this little enclave of New York City, and she's pretty much like in charge of it. She's like the queen of this island.
Good for her.
I tell everybody in California she's the queen. That's not her title. Like she's like second or third in command, but really she runs the show. And anyway, it was her wedding, and I went out there with my wife, not feeling well, but the side effects of my treatment really started hitting me over the weekend. And it just, it took everything I could do to be there. Did the worm.
You did the worm.
Did the worm at the reception.
Brought it out of retirement.
All I could do was about four movements of the worm. And that was it. I was down for the count. Alyssa, cigar of the day. Before I forget, I always do. Very good cigar. The cigar club that I'm a member of just had an event with Rocky Patel Cigars. I know Rocky. Met him personally. He signed many of the paraphernalia I have around the office here. And this is from that event. It's a vintage 2003 60 Cameroon Rocky Patel. Good smoke, one of my favorites. I'm a little negative today, listeners. There's going to be a lot of negativity. I'm going to try to be positive. I'm not feeling well. As people may know, I am dealing with a new type of skin cancer behind my left ear. I've already had surgery on it. They did a great job. You have to pull my earlobe back to see the scars, but they did a great job, doing what they do. Going through the treatments on that now. Definitely not chemo. I'll take this 10 times over 10 times. But I am feeling the effects. So that's why we missed last week. I was traveling. We had a whole thing set up. We were going to do the podcast, and I was not feeling well. And we decided just to, hey, you know what? We can take a week off. And that's what we did.
We did.
That is what we did. Alyssa, today's show, we're going to be bringing a very good friend of mine. named John McGovern. He's a pastor. He's lived almost internationally for years and years. He runs a program called To the Nations. And he's a guy, you probably don't know a lot about this story. I mean, a lot of people know that I resigned a bunch of my positions back in early March to go and help out with Ukraine. Something I'm very passionate about. A lot of Americans have opinions about Ukraine. I don't want to talk about the politics. I support any American's right to criticize or say whatever they want to say about Ukraine. That's our birthright as Americans. I didn't go over there for the politics. I went over there because I know the Russians. I know the evil and the evil they're capable of and the lack of value that they put on human life. And all of us, I think, who are used to be in the defense world, we saw what happened in Syria, but we know the Russians and how they look at the world. And I think a bunch of us who ended up going over there and helping out and are still over there and helping out, we just knew how nasty this was going to be. And a lot of U.S. veterans and U.S. citizens went over there to fight and to directly fight with the Ukrainians. And for those people that made that decision, I support their right to do so. It's not against the law. Americans have a long, distinguished history of citizens of going into wars that the government has stayed out of for various ideological reasons. I would say this, I'm a combat veteran of the war on terrorism, and there is nothing that I've seen in Ukraine that even remotely competes. Ukraine is on such a different intensity level of war that it's still even hard for me to comprehend sometimes. So don't be like this is just a PSA. Don't be like one of these goobers who never joined the military and you think this is your shot. Don't go to Ukraine with any thought that this is anything like Call of Duty or the video games that you play. This is real world stuff. It is a vicious, brutal, modern war of the 21st century between two sovereign nations. It's brutal. It's nasty. The rules of war are not being followed. We haven't seen death and terror at this scale since the Second World War in Europe. That's just the way it is. So I'm definitely one of these people who advise against people going over there who aren't trained or don't know what the hell they're doing. Now, I have some pretty strong and passionate views about this Ukraine thing, but like I said, I never went over there for the politics. I went over there just because I knew people were going to need help. And so for months, I've been a part of a team that has been bringing a team of U.S. veterans that has been bringing supplies in and helping people get out. And it has grown exponentially, and we've had to join forces with other groups like this To the Nations. John McGovern is going to be here. We're going to talk a little bit, spend about 25 minutes about our experiences in Ukraine and what's going on over there, because I don't think the media, as usual here in the United States, gives a good view, an accurate view of what's going on over there. Everything's now mired in politics. And I think Americans need to step back from the politics and look at it from a humanist point of view, and I hope that that's what today's interview segment does. But before we get into the election snapshot, Silva, it's been a minute since we've seen each other in person. I don't know. The viewers seem to like you more than me. We get lots of, I don't let you talk enough comments because I have diarrhea of the mouth. You're here to be my, my Pepto-Bismol and put me in check. How's the week been since we've seen each other?
Pretty good. You guys probably hear my dog in the background. She is my child, so don't make fun of her. But she's a brat. I usually don't talk much on the show because I usually don't have much to say. I get in my side comments.
She's the comedic relief to my insanity. She's the real dose. She's like the raw dose of reality here at the Oasis of reality. But yeah, your dog. Your dog is vocal.
She makes an appearance on every show, if you notice.
She makes
since I've joined.
She has filed an official complaint with the union that she is not allowed on the podcast. It is what it is. Anyway, let's go into the election snapshot for this week. There's been a lot of changes. We had no flips last week, but we did post on social media some non-flips. There was several non-flips. We'll throw that up there the screen now from the non-flips from last week. And then, taking a look at where we're at now, our model, election recall model, has shifted to the right. We try to explain this to everybody that if you look at the methodology of our model, the closer we get to election day, the less weight we're going to put on registered voting polls or just all voter polls, and the more weight we're going to put on likely voter polls. But there's a lot of other data starting to come in now to the model. Fundraising reports, cash on hand, ad buys. In our model, we get a lot of how is the Arizona Senate not red in our model? We get a lot of Republicans going, Blake Masters is going to beat Mark Kelly, the Democrat incumbent. Blake Masters is the Republican challenger. You guys are crazy. Blake Masters is going to win and all this. Well, the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee pulled out. They went dark already in Arizona. This guy's getting no money until October, and the Democrats are flooding money in to defend Senator Kelly, and then our model that plays things like that. It's more than polling that affects our model. Money plays in driving messaging and voters to the polls on election day. But just like money, Alyssa, money and this part of our model, that only really represents 1/4 of our model, that sector of our model. There's other things that go into it: crime, demographics, enthusiasm, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I think it's largely driven by terrible polling right now. The polls are all over the place. The more Democrat-leaning polls refuse to put likely voter screens in. It's insane at this point. They have to have likely voter screens by the end of the month. They have to. I mean, we're 60 some days out from election day or something like this. About just over 2 months away, or exactly 2 months away from election day. And it's like we have to start to build a likely voter model and apply it to these pollsters that just poll 1,200 to 2,000 or 800 or 500 people, and they don't even ask if they intend to vote. That really matters. And so I think there's a lot of just bad polls. Lauren and I call them low confidence polls that we look at and we just don't have any confidence, but we still put them in because we're trying to be fair here. And we admit that we could be in error as well. I could say that when Lauren and I talked yesterday morning, we both feel less confident about our model this year than we have in the first 2 years. And when we both asked each other why that is we are even less confident in the polling nationally this year than we have been in 21 or 20, which were horrific years for polling. Hell, 2016 was a horrific year for polling. In many ways, 2018 was a bad year for polling. The polls seem to be just caught up in this partisan bias and zealotry, and they're pushing out more what they hope to be the end game versus what is actually going to shape up. That being said, there's a lot of data out there that suggests that drives our polls, special elections and just enthusiasm. In every poll that we get a lot of polls. Every poll would suggest that Republicans are more enthusiastic to vote than Democrats. Almost every poll would suggest that. But when we look at these special elections, which are only certain snapshots in minor geographical areas of the country, so we got to take it with a grain of salt, but they do matter for us. Democrats seem to have a higher enthusiasm in these special elections in the primary season than Republicans. There have been some exceptions in the rule, Texas and some other stuff, but in Kansas and Oklahoma and New York, in Minnesota, we've seen some really big warning signs, which really have been the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it. They just keep pushing this idea that Dobbs, the abortion thing, is what's driving all this, and there's no doubt that that's motivated women. There's no doubt about that. But if you really look at the data, and it's glaring, like 2 + 2 = 4. The Republicans' problem is that they're not getting low propensity working class Trump voters to the polls. And if they can figure out between now and November 8th how to get those voters to the polls, and they still may show up, because they're obviously telling these pollsters that they're fired up and they want to vote. So if this working class, low propensity voter actually shows up in the midterm, then I'm telling you right now, Democrats are going to have a very bad night on election night. But I'd rather be in the Democrats' position right now, knowing that I got votes in the bank. And in these special elections, like the floor seems to be a lot higher for Democrats, and the ceiling is a lot lower for them. So their ability to maneuver in the election, the electorate, is much more narrow. Republicans have a much lower floor, in my opinion, and a much higher ceiling. So there's a lot more unknowns for the Republicans. And as a campaign guy, I always would rather more stability on the board for myself. I don't want, and another thing with early voting and all the voting rules now, Republicans often are in a position that they have to hope that election day has a massive turnout, like it did in 2020 for Republicans, in order to have a good day. And I'd rather have votes in the bank than have a smaller universe of voters to push to the poll in GOTV and on election day than this massive universe of voters that Republicans are going to have. That being said, we saw in 2020 that they can come out. And Democrats look at 2020 as some massive victory for them. And it was a good night for Democrats. They won the White House. They threw Trump out. They, by the slimmest margins, took control of the Senate. But let's not, again, I keep saying it, and a lot of the lefties write in, they're like, oh, you're just such a biased Republican. And we all have our biases, there's no doubt. I'm very open and honest that I'm a registered Republican. But that being said, when we talk about elections here, we don't put our opinions into it. We're just reading the data. And we're using our experience to get back to, again, we make no changes in our model without Lauren, the Democrat, and me, the Republican, the only two people who touch the model, signing off on something. And then we let the model give us the answers. We've always had a modest gain for Republicans in the House. As you can see here on the screen, the Republicans are up to 85% chance for us in the House. They picked up one seat this week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we've always been around like R plus 10, R plus 15. That's where our model has consistently been. I don't know. Is end up being Democrats plus 3 or something like this nationally in 2020. I don't remember off the top of my head. And Republicans still picked up 12 seats in the House. People got to remember that. Mm-hmm. Democrats run up the national score in California, New York, and Illinois. There's a lot of congressional districts that don't touch those states.
Yep.
People got to be mindful of that. So for us, Democrats down. We had a flip in the Senate. A lot of polling has come out of Georgia. Clearly, Herschel Walker now has a lead. We've been saying that we ended up flipping in our model. Raphael Warnock, the Democrat incumbent, ahead. Originally, our baselines had Herschel Walker winning, but we saw all these crazy polls that had Warnock up over Walker, but Brian Kemp, the governor, just destroying Stacey Abrams, a very prominent Democrat from Georgia, in her second attempt to dethrone Brian Kemp, the governor. And we just never believed that Brian Kemp was going to outperform Herschel Walker in Georgia by 8 to 10 points. As some of these polls were suggesting, it's ludicrous. This is the polling that just, and how they weight the electorate. These are how these pollsters put their thumb on it, right? They subjectively have to come up with, this is what happens. We don't use likely voter screens. When you just use registered voters or all voters, you pretty much are just guessing what the electorate's going to look like. So you go, okay, we're going to poll 53.5% Democrats and the rest Republicans and everyone else. It's just, these polls have been really frustrating this year. We have a flip in the U.S. Senate. As I said, Georgia is the flip. We now have Herschel Walker on top of Raphael Warnock, largely based on polling, but also some other demographics that have gone into the model have moved that seat back to the Republicans. So now we have it 50-50 again, but the Democrats win on a 50-50 because they have the vice presidency. Republicans have to have 51 seats or more to take control of the chamber. We now have Democrats down to just 53% chance. A lot of people are going to scoff at us. Some have already scoffed at us because this update's on Wednesdays. And a lot of Democrats are beating us up because Nate Silver at 538 has the Democrats at like 70% to retain the Senate. But the reality is we don't quite see it because in our model, I mean, I'm going to tell you why the flip back to Republicans to Georgia helped. The chances move back in the Republicans' favor, the needle moved back. But really what's moving our model to have a lower chance for Democrats is Pennsylvania and Arizona. And everyone goes, Pennsylvania, well, Fetterman's just trashing us. Yes, but that's because Oz has not unified the Republican Party behind him yet. If you look at the polling, Oz has independents, and Oz has more of the establishment Republican behind him. He has to get the working class Pennsylvania voter behind him. If he does that, and I think undecideds are more apt to break in a midterm for the party not in power than the party in power. And so we could be wrong, but our model historically is suggesting that Fetterman could be in trouble, the Democrat out of Pennsylvania. We'll have to wait and see if polling over the next few weeks doesn't close the gap, and the gap has been closing in pollings. But if Oz doesn't get within the margin of error, then our model could change. But the trends look very good for Oz, the Republican challenger in Pennsylvania. In Arizona, or excuse me, in Nevada. I don't know if I said Arizona earlier. I meant Nevada and Pennsylvania. Nevada is really close to flipping in our model. I think by 0.2 of a point right now, Cortez Mastro leads, and that lead against Laxalt from Nevada. Very big name in that state. Very big family. That, and who is running an excellent campaign. He has just been chipping and chipping and chipping away. And Nevada has been trending right since 2016. So all the trends, all the data that we put into our model, I'm telling you right now, I would not be surprised in the next week or two to see Nevada flip red in our model. And that'll really piss off some Democrats and people on the left, and they're going to accuse us of all kinds of bias. But again, that's just where it's going. If we're the Democrats right now, we don't feel as good as the media feels good about your chances. We just don't. That being said, we have never been on this like tangent that Republicans are going to win 50 seats and win 53, 54 seats in the Senate. We don't believe that now. Our model doesn't believe. Is it possible statistically? Sure. Mathematically? Sure. Is it likely? I don't think so. But is it, we think it's pretty much 50-50 is what we're saying right now for the battle of the Senate. It's going to be a very interesting election. It'll be very close between Democrats and Republicans. It's probably going to be a seat or two either way. In the House, again, you know, we had a flip there. That's again our friend Oregon 5th, which I think is like the 5th or 6th times that has switched. But there's been some very good data that's come in for the Republicans out of the Oregon 5th. Jamie McLeod Skinner, the Democratic challenger out of there, knocked out a more moderate Democrat in the primary. It's a Biden district, but it's very moderate. It's very purple. Reminds me a lot of our home here in the Central Valley. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, when Republicans or Democrats win those seats, they think they own it for life. And it's like, no, there's a good 1/3 of the electorate that can be moved, which is not like many districts across the country. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're seeing so much elasticity in that seat. But now Lori Chavez DeRemer, the Republican, now on top of Jamie McLeod Skinner for that. So Republicans pick up a seat over the last 2 weeks. And the governors, we had a flip as well, and that's Arizona. And this is why we're getting trashed by Republicans, because in our model, we now have Kari Lake, the Trump-backed candidate who won the primary, on top of the Democrat Katie Hobbs. And I'm telling you right now, there's reasons why. Again, in our model, you can check out our methodology at electionrecon.com. All our methodology is there. There are major warning signs for us in the Hobbs campaign. Hobbs is, our model doesn't believe Hobbs is the best candidate for the Democrats in that state. We'll leave it at that. So that's where it stands at the moment. Let's go to Real Clear Politics. Take a look at the generic ballot. It has been all over the place, as you guys can see here. Those watching on YouTube, the Republicans and Democrats over the last 2 weeks have changed control of this thing, but basically it's a virtual tie. Democrats up 0.5 point right now. Taking a look at President Biden's job approval rating here in Real Clear Politics, it could continuing to improve. He's at 42.6 approval, 54.4 disapprove, which is kind of surprising to me because all these polls are showing independents. He's underwater with independents. So I guess Democrats are just resoundingly coming back home to him. I don't guess. I know a lot of Democrats are coming back home to him, but which is to be expected. Still not healthy numbers, but kind of Trump-esque now in 2018, where his numbers are. So it's good news for the Democrats. I mean, he was just a couple of months ago. The guy was at 37.7 on the aggregate, which is horrendous. He's almost 5 points better now, 42. 42.6. So that's a significant improvement for the president. Some of his best polling numbers in a year that we're seeing. But still, again, I stress he's underwater. He's unpopular with the country. So taking a look here at 538, and I mean, all you Republican listeners out there, we get this week in and week out. Why do you show Nate Silver? Why do you show 538? Why do you show? And then we got a couple of people from the left trashing us for using big data poll and Rich Barris' stuff. We're showing across the board. We're showing our stuff. We're showing the aggregate. We're showing the mainstream media stuff, and we're showing the alternate media stuff, as I like to call, like people like Rich Barris. So you get the whole gamut, and you can make your own decisions. Okay, we're showing everybody's predictions, but we'll take a look here. The Democrats are up to 69% chance to retain control of the Senate. Republicans 31% chance, and that's where 538 has it in the House. 538 has it 74% chance the Republicans retain the House. We're starting to see our model kind of become more consistent versus 538's model. Our model in 2020 and 2021 was to the right of 538. Now we're kind of seeing that same kind of gap. So Lorna and I feel a little bit better about things because our model kind of at some points was agreeing with 538, at some points was disagreeing with 538, depending on what we're talking about, governors, House, or Senate. Now our model is consistently to the right of 538, and I think that's largely because we changed the weight that we give these registered voting polls. And so, and again, our model, how it's built, we don't knee-jerk react to polls. You have to show trends over a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that's more favorably viewed and weighted in our model as it goes on. So that's where they have it for the House. Still pretty good numbers for Republicans there. I don't know if Democrats have a 1 in 4 chance of retaining control of the House, but that is what it is. We'll go to Big Data Poll. They just updated their public polling project over the last 2 weeks, and you can see even here at Big Data Poll, they're showing the same tightening of the generic ballot as the rest of the world has it. They have Republicans up just 0.3%. Over Democrats, 42.5, 41.2. A lot of undecideds out there, almost 1 in 10 undecided in their aggregate. I think this is pretty reasonable. We actually have it, Democrats now about 0.2% higher in our aggregate model, but again, that's just these polls. So we apply all these polls. I don't know how Rich Barris exactly does it with his methodology, but I mean, we're within a point of a big data poll, and I think. I think it's reasonable. I think it's it's super reasonable, and when you look at polling and margin of error and all that. So I think I don't know if this holds. I think Republicans are starting to transition from primary season into general election season. The party out of power has more to do in the primary season than the party in power, and so we've been hearing a lot of Democrat talking points over the summer. Republicans are about to flood our airwaves and our mailboxes with all kinds of campaign messaging. Democrats are going to counter. Everyone be ready for the season of 800 mailers in your mailboxes and robocalls and all this stuff. It's all coming, and there's going to be a competing message for the country, and we'll see what wins out. So that's taking a look at the election recon scoreboard updated on 9/7 a couple of days ago. We now have it U.S. Senate, Democrats 50, Republicans 50. U.S. House, 227 seats for the Republicans, 208 for the Democrats. And for the governors, 27 for Republicans, 23 for the Democrats. No changes for us in our state legislatures. 32 upper chambers for Republicans, 18 for the Democrats. 33 lower chambers for the Republicans, 16 for the Democrats projected. And that is the election recon snapshot so far. Already I'm going long. So without further ado, I'm going to transition to our interview segment. John McGovern, senior pastor, CEO, man extraordinaire of To the Nations. That's the number 2, tothenations.com, to check out his stuff. But we've been great teammates in Ukraine, and we're going to spend the next 20 or so minutes talking about what we're doing in Ukraine. And if you are so inclined to help out, at the end of that, we will give you the website where you can go and donate to help my team's mission, which is Javelin Joint Allied Veterans Emergency Logistics Information Network. Why such a long name? Well, if you spell that out, it's an acronym for Javelin. And it was kind of like screw you to the Russians and Putin. So that's why we really just picked the acronym and filled a bunch of BS in for it. But we definitely operate now under the umbrella of to the nations. Couldn't do what we do without them and their logistical support. So without any further ado, my friend, John McGovern. It is my pleasure to welcome, first time ever on the Election Recon podcast, a very dear friend of mine, somebody who I met by just chance circumstance earlier this year. Two guys kind of with the same mission who just by providence and goodwill met in a foreign country to do good work for another foreign country. Joining us now on the podcast is my dear friend, someone who I truly respect and admire and have great affection for, John McGovern. John, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Josh.
So, John, you are way better than me about giving your decorated resume as a pastor and a leader in ministry, as well as all the international work you do. A lot of international work. You've lived primarily internationally, I think.
Yes.
In that work. So, why don't you take a couple of minutes and just kind of give us a rundown on your history and how you came, how that led you to meet me earlier this year in Warsaw.
No, my wife and I have spent much of our life in Hong Kong, China before Hong Kong, and then into Hong Kong, which is now part of China. And we established churches there that now we've been able to send out 48 churches out of Hong Kong into various nations in the world. Again, similar to Ukraine, I was back here in America. I turned over the work to my assistant pastor there in Hong Kong and just oversee the different pastors in Asia and throughout the world. But I was watching TV. I saw what was going on in Cairo and in Tunisia. So I got on the next plane, flew into the Arab Spring uprisings in Cairo and Tunisia, see how we could help, begin to develop friendships and relationships there. In 2015, 1.2 Muslim are predominantly Muslim people from the Middle East were coming into Germany, and Middle Eastern people. And so I got on the plane, flew in there, began to help, see how we could work, organize care for the different Middle Eastern people that spoke Arabic. We already had connections with the Farsi community, with the Iranian people. So I flew into Cairo, was able to get, at that time, about 120 interpreters, English into Arabic, and bring them into Germany and begin to help assimilate all the different people that were in there, 1.2 million. It was the same thing in Ukraine. Saw the TV just like you did. Didn't want to be sitting back there in my chair, so got on the next plane that I could, flew in March 10th. And I believe you and I met, probably wasn't much after that, maybe March 12th, just in the lobby there. We were talking, got to meet you, and we ended up becoming very, very good friends and try to accomplish the same thing. The gospel, number one, humanitarian, number two, number three, medical. And we've become great friends ever since that time.
I've never seen anything quite like Ukraine, of the organic civilian, even before the NGOs were able to pour in there, just the organic civilian Joe Schmo upswelling of support. I don't think we've seen anything like it since the Second World War.
No.
And where the rest of the world converges on a certain spot of the world and just really pours their heart out in support. And I can only imagine, I've honestly met people from 40 different countries so far in Ukraine. I'm not exaggerating there. I'm probably underselling it. I mean, it's just been insane, the amount of just groups who meet at the airport in Warsaw or Krakow, who are just, everyone just had the same idea, whether they're in Canada or Japan or United States, European countries, whatever, they solve this issue. I think a lot of people who understand history knew that this was going to be this is going to be something we haven't seen in a very long time. But why do you think that is? What makes Ukraine different than some of these other conflicts that have propped up over the last 20, 25 years? Why do you think that there's such an international outpouring of support to Ukraine today?
Well, we can definitely trace it back to one man, Zelensky. He has galvanized the whole country. If he would have fled that country, I don't know if there would have been that unity, among all the people. He's become, at least for those of us that know him and have seen what he's done, he's our hero. And of course, what they tell me every time I say you're my hero, they shake me and say, "Don't say that," because in their mind, the only heroes are dead, and so they're fighting, they're working hard. But that's how I trace it back, Josh. I feel Zelensky was a galvanizing person.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. I didn't really think about that till right now, to right when you said it. But I think without question, while me and my military friends were trying to figure out what we're going to do or how we were going to help, well, that plan was being formulated. I think it was certainly accelerated by the comments that President Zelensky made. When he said, "Don't I don't need a ride. I need weapons and ammunition." And
No
I,
fly zone.
I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but I don't need a ride. I need guns. Um, that was pretty profound. I remember a lot of my military veterans were like, someone that elegant has to be saved. And so no, there's no question. I mean, I've talked to people all over that country, very diverse country in terms of how they see things. I've met with a much more liberal populace in Lviv earlier in the war. I think Lviv's a melting pot now because so many people have evacuated to the west. But early on, it was very clear to me that Lviv was for Ukraine. Ukraine's a much more conservative country, I think, than most in Europe or perhaps the world. Very devoutly religious.
Mm.
But Lviv is a little bit more um, liberal, I would say, in their politics than the eastern side of the country, in my experience. So it was interesting talking to people who are more liberal, talking to people who are more conservative. But the point is there's no democracy or there's no country that I have ever been to, ever. I have not been anywhere where I have seen a perfect government
No.
worthy of the freedom of criticism. And no matter what the politics are here at home, I think a lot of internal politics at home drive the interpretation of the politics in Ukraine, if that makes sense. But I think it's so profound because out of the 435 members of Congress, I'd be willing to bet. John, not even half of them. I swear, I mean this. I do not have the faith that even half of them would have stayed and fought against such odds. They would have tucked tail and run. And that's in the United States of America. This guy Zelensky, yeah, he has united to bring my point full circle from Lviv to Kyiv to the Donbass down to Odessa to Kharkiv in the north. This dude has united his country on a vision of self-preservation and self-defense, and it's pretty spectacular.
I agree. The interesting thing about Zelensky, people want to engage every now and then, not very many. 5% of the people I talk to want to bring up different criticisms from things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago in his life, because he was a comedian, an actor. And so they want to bring that up. I just tell people to look at what he did from the beginning of this war to who he is today and what he continues to do. that to me says it all.
Yeah, I met with a young couple in Kiev, and they uh, were not fans of Zelensky before the war. And they said something profound. They would have never voted for him, but they lived in two worlds: the world before February 24th when the Russians invaded, and the world after. And in the world after that, Zelensky was their man. Zelensky is their leader, and they're despite having never been loyal to that man before February 24th, because he stood and didn't run, like, his character, his politics are what it is, but his character speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
And those of us that have been over there, this guy he has commanded respect, and I think deservedly so, from his people, by just standing up and be willing to fight and die. And he didn't even evacuate his family. Guy had an opportunity to evacuate his family. He chose not to, because he's leading by example. And I think sometimes circumstance in life forces great change. Americans should know this, right? Americans who are of a certain age, young millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers. I mean, we should all know this because this happened to us on 9/11. If any American thinks back that far, we two different worlds. And September the 11th, there was a world before 9/11 for us who were alive for that, and there was the world after 9/11 for us who are alive for that. It's the same thing for Ukraine, and 9/11 fundamentally changed our country for better and worse, depending on who you ask and subjective feelings. And I'm sure this war is going to change Ukraine for the better or worse. But I've always contended, John, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've always contended, because you and I, when we're so mission focused when we're over there together, and you and I have done a lot of good work together, and we'll get into that if we have a little bit of time here. But we've never really talked about the stuff that we've heard or dealt with when we've come back home. And there has been it's been, I would say, 80% supportive for me of what we're doing over there. But there has been like this 20%, skepticism, or, why do you care? Or, my favorite is, I got this one a couple times out of local news stories. Like, if you gave a damn, why didn't you ever put on a uniform and fight for your own country, for our country?
Hey,
like, yeah, the social media warriors.
Well,
Yeah, I just laugh it off because it's ignorant. But my point is, there is this very strong skepticism and criticism of well, Ukraine's not a real democracy, or it's still an oligarchy. I'm like, it's 30 years separated from the Soviet Union. Like we didn't get it right in the first 80 years. We had to fight a civil war in the 1860s. And, I think Americans, we get very, I don't know what the right word is, but we get very arrogant, perhaps, in our judgments of others. And we forget our own history. That, my whole thing is, I believe the Ukrainians have a right. Like, it offends me. I think I've told you this. It offends me to my core that in the 21st century, we continue to fight over sovereign territory. Like, what Russia is doing is so 19th and 20th century. Like, I would have hoped that humanity, regardless of politics or creed, would be over this fighting for land and fighting for really empire. And that's exactly what Russia's doing here. And I think there's a greater evil. And I really get upset with people who want to criticize the way, like, the Ukrainians are fighting this war, or all this stuff, or people who buy into this denazification argument for Ukraine. I have been all over Ukraine. I have been everywhere in Ukraine. I have not found one Nazi, one symbol sympathetic to the Nazi movement, but I have not found one Nazi anything. Have you?
No, never.
This argument about denazifying a country is.
I've met a lot of anti-Nazi people.
Yeah, yes,
for sure.
This is a country that's young and hungry to figure it out on its own. It's prideful. There's a lot of pride, and think they deserve it. There's a lot of Ukrainians have asked me, John, and maybe they've asked you, but there's a lot of Ukrainians have asked me, like, where the hell is the United States? Why are you guys not here fighting? what's going on? Do you not care about democracy? And I tell them, I said, I always, I let the conversation play out, let the venting, take place. But then I say, what would be better in the long term for your country? The biggest, baddest, most technologically advanced military in the world coming halfway across the world, being world police again, and winning this war for you, or you as independent Ukrainians winning a war of independence on your own merits, that you slayed Russia on your own. And they do think about it. It's not a universal like, oh, we get it, okay, that makes sense. I said, I think for everyone involved, take away the fact that you have two nuclear powers that could be fighting, which is bad on a great many levels. The Ukrainians, who I believe will ultimately win here.
I do too.
In a conventional fight. I really believe that. Whether it takes 2 years or 20 years, who can say? But I do believe at the end of this trial, the Ukrainians will have earned their freedom and independence for the first time ever. And I think that's a powerful, powerful thing. And you and I have both seen these Ukrainians are hungry for it. They are starving for it, to be free of the grasp of Moscow and to be free to choose their own path forward. And I think that will be difficult. I think in the days moving forward, it will be difficult for Ukraine. I think there will be a tug of war of a more liberal or more conservative. And when I say conservative, I don't mean it like liberal conservative here in the United States. I mean conservative, or I guess traditionalist would be a better word, a more traditionalist Ukraine versus a more liberal Europeanized Ukraine. But those people should have the right to figure it out on their own. That's always been my contention against the haters about this Ukraine thing. Here in America, Americans, there's a lot of talk, and I am really a fiscal hawk. And, the United States taxpayers have sent a lot of money and a lot of equipment to Ukraine, a lot. And I understand and I sympathize with taxpayers who go, we got our own problems at home and we got to spend money here at home and blah, 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 blah. But I don't know how you feel about this. I want to get your opinion. I've gone long-winded here. I apologize. But I'm also a student of history, as I am a combat veteran, right? And I wonder if we had spent an excess of money in the 1930s in Europe and in Asia, allowing local nations, smaller nations, to build their own defense against Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan, if that was not the better financial investment at the front end, just compared to the per capita amount that we had to spend fighting and winning a world war. So I am of the belief that this investment that is being made in Ukraine, I know it's not going to be popular with conservatives on the right in this country, but I am of the investment that I'd rather try it this way, arming Ukraine to take out an enemy of the United States. And let's be very clear, you and I both know this with our own experience. Russia is not a friend to the United States of America.
Absolutely not.
I believe that, this might be the better way to go. Send some treasure over there. And that way in the hopes that we do not have to spill even more American blood. And allow the Ukrainians, empower them, the strength to win their own independence back from an invading Russia. That's kind of my view on it. And my answer to the why are we sending all this money over there thing. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, exactly. So now it's been since March 10th that I've been there. And so I've met a lot of different people. The prevailing thought is they need the weapons. They need the ammo. They're outnumbered 7-1 by the Russians as far as people or personnel or troops. And they're outnumbered 9-1 in ammo. So I just talked to 2 special forces commanders, full bird colonels, and they said that the Russians fight tough. So they have to make every shot count. And they don't need more personnel. They don't need the Americans coming in fighting beside them. They just need the equipment to fight themselves. And, I'm grateful that America has sent a lot of equipment. A number of countries that have promised or overpromised, underdelivered. And one thing that I do want to really make clear that I've got the pictures to prove it, and the the different people that could back up everything I'm saying. That Russia has billboards in the country right now that say we want Alaska. Their intention, they feel like they're going to be the moral police for all the decadence in the West, all the immorality, corruption. They have a huge push by the religious people in Russia on Putin that goes beyond ideology or psychopath, him being a psychopath. They feel like they want to take over Ukraine. So Ukraine knows that they're defending not only Ukraine, but they're defending the West right now. They're defending us. And I believe that with all my heart. They win, we win. If that doesn't happen, Moldavia, Estonia, all these different countries, and Alaska isn't that far. And so I said, well, there isn't an Alaskan alive that would let that happen. But the commanders both told me, they said, don't underestimate how tough the Russians fight. When you and I were there, Josh, we had talked to that other NATO man friend of yours, and everybody was shocked at how under-equipped, ill-prepared, ill-trained, or undertrained that they were. They were shocked at the level of the equipment. I think you mentioned to me that even the armor on the tanks was just subpar, and everybody thought that they were first class. He said, originally Russia came in. Russia convinced their soldiers they were going to quell social unrest, and so they weren't prepared for an all-out war. When they came in, they were engaged fully by the Ukrainian people, and engaged toughly. And so then they changed their strategy. Once they did that, they began to send in their special forces, their tough fighters. But as you mentioned before, in the last 2 weeks, we've been able to see the counteroffensive for the first time by the Ukrainians. And in the Kherson area, they're pushing them hard. I get videos every day. And so, as we say, Slava Ukraini.
Yeah, I mean they're making real progress in the South, but I think what even the doubly surprising, the Ukrainians never cease to surprise and amaze me, is what at first was thought of like as a feinting maneuver between Kharkiv and Izium, a counterattack in the Northeast, and which is they've literally pushed the Russians 50 kilometers in 48 hours. In that sector, and that's that's pretty amazing. And I think and it really just changed the game. Even I drank the Kool-Aid of Russia is a more modernized, more lethal. They've learned the lessons of the Soviet Union. All this hogwash. It's all hogwash. Russia is just not. They just cannot. They cannot in a conventional to conventional fight. All things being even. The Russian troops are just not as well prepared as most of the Ukrainian regular forces. Ukrainian regular forces have learned so much from 2014. The Russians have learned almost nothing. The Russians have superior technology, to be sure. HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, and there are some things that the United States has provided the Ukrainians that are making a significant difference on the battlefield. Yeah, but the Russians have more tanks, more artillery pieces. It's almost endless, their arsenal. But the quality of soldier is in dispute. I could be convinced that I would take the Ukrainian special forces over Russian Spetsnaz right now. I really could be convinced of that. I just think results matter, and I think in a stand-up fight, Ukrainian special forces have gotten the better of their Russian counterparts so far throughout the entirety of the war. How much, I mean, the first time that we came over there, we brought like 2 suitcases full of supplies, and we thought that was
Yeah,
fantastic. Like we brought all this stuff,
it
and with
was
the
at the
Ukrainians
time.
are like, yeah, thanks, but we need like this times 100, and all of us were trying to figure out like how do we accomplish this. There's so many. I get so many messages from Ukrainians now from all over the country. Like I mean, the demand is still great, and
Yeah,
I can't stress that enough, folks. Don't quit donating. The demand is still great. Blood is still being shed every day, almost even more so than in the first part of the war. So the point I'm trying to make is, I remember back in March where we brought 2 suitcases of stuff and trying to figure out how to even get that over and get that through. And 2 suitcases became 2 tubs, which became 20 tubs, which became semi trucks and airplane cargo. And we've both really kind of struggled. I mean, the biggest thing for our humanitarian work has been the logistics. I think that's probably for everybody. Did you think back in March the very small things that we built would blossom into kind of what you have going on today?
never. I couldn't have. My plan would have been so low. My bar would have been so low. Uh, just seeing everything that's opened up, and I never could have dreamed it. And so, we're legal now, both in Poland and in Ukraine. Ever thought that as we're talking, we have a semi going up with 30 tons, or a couple of semis going up to a couple of cities there with 30 tons of supplies, and we get that every 2 weeks. Still not enough.
When you say legal, um, explain to the listeners and the viewers what that means, because
It means
I just want to set
yeah,
up the context.
yeah,
Everybody just kind of showed up and was doing their own thing. And the
right,
crisis, the emergency of the moment, governments were kind of like, okay, go do what you got to do. But then a couple months later, we all kind of experienced a little bit of a tightening of the grasp, because
right,
it only takes a couple people to screw it up for everybody else. And there was some weird black market things going on, no doubt about it.
absolutely.
No doubt about it. And where the government's kind of started tightening things up. And then, there was a couple weeks there where, everyone was kind of in limbo about shipping stuff over because
Right.
would it be confiscate all this stuff? And then, you really stepped it up and provided a great umbrella, and you became legal in both Poland and Ukraine. But explain, elaborate on that just a little bit more. What does that mean to be legal?
Yeah. Usually when you form an NGO, it can take 2 years to form those things. We literally, I don't believe I spent more than an hour, and much of it was sitting waiting for the papers to be drawn up in both Ukrainian, Polish, and English, and having an interpreter there to make sure they read back everything, and the secretaries giving the areas where we sign our name to it. So we got that taken care of. A legal nonprofit NGO, non-government organization in Poland, which means that legally we can bring in anything, anything non-lethal through customs. And
We should make that clear for everybody. John or I, as our, and the other groups that we affiliate with, we do not bring any. We don't do anything lethal. We don't bring any. We're not in the business. We're not like weapons traffickers or anything like that. We're strictly in the business of humanitarian aid and some self-protective stuff. So we the line for us, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, I know it is for my team, but the line for us and the groups that we work with are defensive in nature. So we'll bring
yeah,
in like vests and helmets and stuff like this, but we're not shipping guns and ammo.
right.
That's not it's not what we do. So just to
No
clear any miss
155s.
just to clear any confusion there. But John, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, and then in Ukraine, it's a great relationship that we have with the government. So all of our packages, many of the packages that big organizations have going through there, say for humanitarian aid, not for resale. Ours say property of the Ukrainian government, and it's got their crest and our logo for To the Nations, and then to the nations.com below, which
And
makes a big difference.
And To the Nations is your parent organization. That's your
Right.
that's
Number two, the nations. To
yeah.
the nations. number2.com.
Regardless of the politics here at home or over there or whatever, these are people who are asking for the right to choose their own future. And that should be the only thing that matters to a true American, because that's what we have here. And I am now and always will be supportive of that. And I am against 100% the evils that Russia has bestowed upon this country in the 21st century. We should be well beyond this as human beings. It's sad. It's disappointing. It makes me angry. And it's why I'm pro-Ukrainian and will be till the bitter end of this thing. John, real quick, go ahead and plug up, let the listeners know if they want to contribute or be a part of To the Nations, how they can be supportive to that effort.
Yeah, they can just go on to the nations.com and they can see what we're doing. We'll have another website coming up too later on, but to the nations.com, to the nations.com.
All right. Well, John, I certainly appreciate it. I mean, we can talk for Ukraine for hours. There's so many stories to tell. I really do appreciate you giving the time to be on the podcast today. We might have to do this in 2 parts because we've gone so long.
Okay.
Should the producers say?
Anytime.
But John, thank you so much for being a part of it. I love you.
Thank you, Josh.
I respect you. Thank you for your patience.
And vice versa.
Your wisdom.
Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini, my friend. Have a good day.
Okay, brother. Thank you.
That was my very good friend, John McGovern. John, thank you for spending so much time with us. Definitely went longer in that segment, but I think this Ukraine thing is important. Alyssa, I don't know how you view it as a political American just trying to live her young life here in the United States. But we're going to go to the Grunt's perspective. This one, I had some other things planned, but as you know, we lost a giant in the geopolitical realm of the world. Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II has passed away. I'm going to just have some very briefs because we've gone so long already. I'm going to have some brief comments on that. Let's go to the BBC as the news broke in England and Great Britain about the death of the Queen.
The BBC is interrupting its normal programmes to bring you an important announcement. This is BBC News from London. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. In a statement, the palace said the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. BBC Television is broadcasting this special programme reporting the death of Her Majesty the Queen.
The Queen of England.
She was a legend.
70 years, Alyssa. 70 years on the throne. So, I'm not one of these Americans that gets caught up in the Meghan and Harry, the William and Kate, the Princess Di, and all this stuff, Camilla, all these conspiracies. Our country fought 2 wars to be rid of this monarchy. It's whatever to me, right? Like, our country is founded on not having a king or a queen, So I don't get as invested in it, but as a student of history, I am quite fascinated with this woman who is the longest reigning modern monarch, I think, ever. I could be wrong. I don't know all the kings and queens out there, but certainly there is a strong tie between England and the United States. The Anglo-Saxon world is closely tied. The United States is much more of a melting pot, but England has become a little more culturally diverse as well over the years. There's been a lot of mostly positive things said about the Queen. There's been, as usual, in the world of social media, of which I am super negative about today. There's some haters, but let's just take a look. I just want to spend a moment. of not really the politics or like the English politics, the American politics, but this lady was born 21 April 1926. 1926
Dang.
is when she was born. Of course, dying 8 September 2022. This woman has seen some history. She was literally born in one world and died in a completely different world.
Completely different. Like,
She was born before anybody launched anything ever into space. Think about that. We have all our smartphones, computers, all of this, Alyssa. Man has walked on the moon. We have rovers on Mars. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of satellites in space now. It's just cluttered up there. This lady was born when not one man-made object circled the Earth.
that's crazy to put it in that perspective.
Before TVs existed.
Now that's crazy.
As the world was pretty much transitioning from horse and carriage to automobiles is when this woman was born.
No.
That's true. This woman fought in the British Auxiliary as a mechanic in World War II. I don't think a lot of people know that about her
I
history.
didn't know that.
Yeah, she's definitely a hands-on kind of gal.
She is.
This is a woman who loved driving. She didn't get to do it a whole lot, but up in Balmoral in Scotland, she has a little property up there and a few Land Rovers. She gets to drive. She loved driving. One of the most profound moments, I think, in the history of the world is Saudi Arabia, who is not so nice to the ladies, by the way, our partners in peace. She drove the Saudi king in her car. And I have to think she knew what she was doing. That was a boss move. You know what I'm saying? It's a boss move. Like, oh, you don't think women could drive? Let me show you what the Queen of England could do. Checkmate, sucker.
I'm surprised he got in the car.
Yeah, I wonder how that went down with the old religious police. But I'm sure in any government, the elite don't have the same legal standards as us commoners. This woman has sworn in 14 or 15 prime ministers of England. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
3 women. She was there for the first woman, Margaret Thatcher. And then more recently, Theresa May. Mm-hmm. And now Liz Truss. So 3 women prime ministers. 70 years. 6 February. Her platinum jubilee. Crazy. The Grunt's perspective this week is simply this. World leaders are human too. They should be judged, regardless if they're a monarch or a president or a member of a Congress or a parliament, a CEO. Leaders should be judged and held into account. And I believe history will. I think we should take the time to respect the life that this woman led. She became the Queen of England at a very young age, at a time when the gap of opportunity between men and women in the Western world was Grand Canyon sized big. And she did it with grace and dignity for 70 years. And she lived a life from World War II. This woman swore Winston Churchill in twice, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe just once. I think she became queen. Maybe Churchill was already out of office. I don't know. I have to go back and look. But this woman, the Churchill was her prime minister twice. Winston Churchill. This woman knew Winston Churchill, and probably had some very snarky things to say to the man. So, I mean, all the way up to Tony Blair, David Cameron, Boris Johnson. I mean, this woman has just seen so much history, and I think we can respect that with the same dignity and grace that she showed the world for 70 years. And that's the Grunt's perspective this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that she was in a position of power at a super young age, and she was a woman when women weren't leaders. I mean, I'm sure everyone looks back and has regrets, and they could have done stuff better. So,
being a Gen Zer, this is something we have in common. This woman's been Queen of England my entire life. Mm-hmm. She's been Queen of England your entire life. She's been Queen of England for our parents' entire life. It's kind of this weird unifying thing between the generations. Like, this is how long she has been the queen. Very long time. When is your youngest memory of, like, when was the first time you recognized that England still had a monarchy and there's a queen and this lady was the queen?
I have no idea. Maybe like 5th grade? I don't know. Probably like 5th grade.
Did you follow like all the wedding stuff? Kate, William, you may have been a little too young for that, but Harry, Meghan, this
Nope.
American, actress wins the heart of a prince, and it's all this romanticism and stuff like that.
No.
I digress. With that, let's go to the hate, Alyssa.
Oh, lovely.
It's time for the 3-pointer segment, the part of the show where we answer your questions. You can email questions to us at electrecon, elect singular, electrecon@gmail.com. You can send in a question through our website at electionrecon.com through the contact tab, or you can DM us on social media. That's at Election Recon, and that's Twitter, Facebook, and the Instagrams. I'm going to say that like an old man because I still don't understand or know how to use Instagram, but that's neither here nor there. You can DM us there and get questions in. We'll pick 3 questions every week. Just because we don't respond to your question this week doesn't mean we won't bring it up in another week. Go ahead and keep writing us in. We do appreciate hearing from all of you. So without further ado, Alyssa, give me question 1.
And you guys were so kind this week. We even have 4.
Well, we have 4 because there's a certain situation that happened that I'm going to finish the show with. The show's going to go long. This will be our longest show of the season, but the Ukraine thing was important. We were off for 2 weeks, so this show's going to be a little bit longer. We're off for a week, really, but kind of came out to 2 weeks. But the 4th one is not so much one that was picked by the 3-pointer segment. It's what I picked. And that one is not nice.
It deserved to be picked.
And I have
you
some,
asked for it. Not you.
I have some things to say. But first, let's go to the 3-pointer questions.
The first one says, it's from Frank A. in Los Angeles, California. It says, if every poll says that the GOP has a higher motivation or energy to vote, why are we not seeing that translate in GOP victories in these special elections?
Who sent that in?
From Frank A. in Los Angeles.
Frank, my fellow Californian. That's a good question. I think I touched it a little bit earlier in the show. If you listen to the mainstream media, it's because the Dobbs decision and the Mar-a-Lago raid has energized women to vote against Republicans and has swung independents back towards the Democrats. I think there is some very modest truth to both of those points. But as I look at the data, and and again, that's all I do is geek out on this stuff, I see a much more profound trend than that. I don't believe that Dobbs, which abortion continues to not be in the top 5 issues in voters' minds collectively. It's still the economy. It's still cost of living. It's still crime and security. I think what you're really seeing is, whether you like it or not, whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or not, wherever he plays, Republican turnout is higher. And whenever he doesn't get involved, Republican turnout is lower. And in many of these special elections, Donald Trump did not play or have anything to do. And the lower propensity Trump voter, that working class Republican voter who just can't be really counted upon to vote regularly, hasn't been showing up in these special elections. Significant victories for the Democrats. I think they are real warning shots for the Republican hopes of a 40 or 50 seat House swing or gain in November. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. I've told you guys that on the show all season long here in 2022, that I see a much more modest outcome for Republicans, somewhere in the 15 to 25 seat range. I could see a 30 seat if everything goes well in the next 60 days for Republicans. Certainly possible. I think it's more likely than not Republicans pick up 15 to 25 seats in the House, and Republicans, listen to me. I think this is a missed topic. The red wave really started to build in 2020 when Republicans surprised everybody and picked up 12 seats in the House. Imagine if Republicans didn't pick up those 12 seats in the House and it was just a win across the board for the Democrats. We'd be talking about, 30, 40, 50 seats for Republicans right now, because those 12 seats surely would fall. More than likely. Of course, we had redistricting and everything between now and then. But my point is, Republicans really cut into their gains 2 years ago and put them in the position to almost guaranteed at this point to take the House. And that should be remembered. I don't think anybody right or left or center in the media is talking about that. Republicans really started their gains 2 years early when they surprised everybody and picked up 12 seats in the House. And so by that alone, I feel like there's less opportunities like there was in the 2010 red wave in Barack Obama's first term, where Republicans just cleaned house with the Democrats. I hope that answered your question. I don't know if I really answered your question there, but that's our answer. Let's go to question number 2. Frank, thanks for writing in.
This is from Linda M. in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and she says, why do you people keep reposting liars and fakes like Cook Political and 538? These people are liars who push fake polls to simply depress Republicans not to vote. You should know better than to listen to these liars.
Every week, man, we get them. We get them every week. What was her name again? I'm sorry. I'm a little out of it today.
Linda.
I'm going to be very short with the answer because I already answered this earlier as well. Linda, we put this up and we hear from Republicans every week because we put 538 on our show. We here in the oasis of reality. This is the breath. This is where you can come and get the information from all sides. I show you 538 in Real Clear Politics, so you can really get a sense of where everyone's at and what we're talking about. And then you can come to your own conclusions. And if we're wrong, our final projection November 8th, and you come back and you look at our final projections and you're like, you guys are idiots and we were wrong, we'll take it on the chin. We will. If 538 is wrong, he should take it on the chin. But the bottom line is we show everybody and everything so you get an unbiased look at people who disagree with us. The prognostications from across the board, right, left, and center, including our own. Next question.
The next question is from KCS in Arlington, Virginia, and they said, with the Republicans taking yet another loss in the special election this week in Alaska, are you guys at Election Recon going to finally wake up and downgrade your overly optimistic GOP projections from the midterms?
I threw in a lefty criticism too. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really similar to the last question. Again, I talked a lot about the special elections. They are affecting our model for sure. There's not a better poll than actual voting results. But the electorate of the primary or special election season is not going to necessarily be the electorate of the general election. It'll be higher turnout, more people engaged. It is going to be a different electorate. So, yes, we consider them. No, they don't dominate the thinking behind our model. And again, all of our methodology is there at electionrecon.com, and you can see how we come to our results. We say it all the time. 2 does not a pattern make. If we're right 3 times in a row, we're going to start feeling a little bigger about ourselves. The ego will get a little bigger on this side of the mic, but let's wait to see if it's fluky these first 2 times or we're pretty close this time around. So thanks for writing in. I want to go to the 4th one. This is not a 3-pointer. This is one that I picked myself because this didn't even come from the Election Recon social media, Alyssa. And folks, if you're wondering why we're all sweating, it's really, really effing hot in California. And because we smoke cigars in this room, it is cut off from central air and heating. So not to make the rest of this building smell like cigar smoke. So while we do the podcast, no air conditioning. And that's why I'm sweating. Neither here nor there. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Alyssa, I went to a wedding this past week that had 2 beautiful ladies who were pledging their love for one another. You know how very libertarian-minded I am. And I should have expected, but I did not. I was not prepared for the amount of nastiness that I got for just being, and I was generally happy to be there. This is my stepsister-in-law, new lady for my father-in-law, her daughter, is the situation there. Over the years of being married to my wife, I've grown very affectionate towards this lady. I have great respect for her, for what she does professionally, for her sense of humor, and just her overall person, her overall humanity. And I was very excited to go to this wedding. I know my wife was. We wanted to be there, support the family. And she is family by marriage, but she's family. And I take that very seriously. And this is mild, but I got a lot of this on my personal social media, and I have something to say about it. We're going to put it on the screen now. Go ahead and read it off, Alyssa. This is a DM from Twitter to my personal Twitter account.
From Twitter, a prime example why I'm not on Twitter. It says, "You should be ashamed of posting pictures of homosexuals on social media. You're not worth anything and you're not a real Christian man. You are evil and will be judged for it in the end."
That was polite. Before I even go off on a rant here to end the show, you are a apolitical Gen Z lady. Mm-hmm. You've played basketball at the junior college and high school level. You have a much different worldview than I think older folks do. Mm-hmm. Even millennials like myself, even though I identify as a Gen Xer. I do not claim the millennial title. But that being said, what do you think about that comment, just without knowing any of the context of the facts?
You're not the only one that's going to be judged in the end. I think going on social media and spreading hateful comments is a lot more than you posting photos of two people minding their business in life. It doesn't affect this person at all, and yet they want to have such a strong opinion.
Don't you think it's like this is the problem? The world's on fire. The country's going to hell in a handbasket. The economy is not great. The country is literally getting ready to tear itself in two. And you want to take the time out of your day, somebody who barely knows me on social media, and it took every fiber of my being to not put this person on blast publicly. If they would have written into the election recon social media, bet your ass this individual, who is a woman, by the way, chastising me, who is a woman chastising me, by the way, on this. Not that it makes a difference, but it's just, there was a lot more women who threw hate at me than men.
Really?
I thought that was surprising. But maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I would have put this person and publicly shamed the hell out of him. I almost wanted. It was very close. Right before the show started, I cropped it, but I was going to put this person on blast. We are no longer friends. This person is blocked on my social media. I do not tolerate bigotry of any kind. I do not tolerate it. All I did, and I'm going to show you a picture now of the beautiful Danny and Mary, and I hate to bring like family who has no interest in my political life into my stuff. You know me, I'm very compartmentalized. I'm very upset and passionate about this because it was just a stream, just a trickle all week long of how dare you post pictures of a wedding of a family member. But what business? Stop it. Know your role. Shut your mouth. This has nothing to do with you. It's none of your business. Apply the thumper rule that we all learned watching Disney movies growing up. Of if you don't have anything nice to say, then shut your damn mouth. I'm pretty sure that's exactly word for word what Thumper said in the Disney movie.
Right or left, if you have nothing better to do but go online and put hate comments, I think you need to reevaluate. I don't know if you're making the best time of your life here.
This is supposed to be the land of the free. You know, I am a religious person. You know that of me. But I do not enforce, and I'm big on this, I do not enforce my religious views, and I'm not necessarily saying my religious views agree with this person at all. Vengeance is mine, hath saith the Lord. That's what I have to say to this ignorant bigot of a human being and the other 14 other people who took time out of their day to hide behind their computer screens and sent. And this is how you know. This is how there were some public comments, you know, but just from the trolls. But this is how you know the people that you do have an acquaintance with are too ashamed to publicly post something is when they got to go to your DMs. They don't even want to post on the picture. And it was a beautiful wedding with two beautiful human beings. These are two people who clearly love each other, want to be with each other. And I just don't understand the American propensity, right or left, to get into other people's business.
Worry about yourselves.
If the world, Alyssa, would just worry about themselves, we'd be, check yourself first. Here's another piece of scripture Jesus Christ washed the feet of criminals and prostitutes and homeless people. I wonder how many homeless people this individual, this bigot, this ignorant piece of crap. And if you're listening, I bet you're not listening to the podcast, but if you are listening to the podcast, ma'am, you are a piece of crap for what you did here. You got to better yourself. Like, it was a celebration. It was all good vibes and good time. And these 15 people decided, I'm going to take a shit on it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go out of my way, just take a shit on a wedding. If you're one of those people that said that about this wedding, but you believe in Second Amendment rights, or you believe in the government not telling you what to do, then you're a fucking hypocrite. You are an absolute hypocrite. Stay out of people's business. You can't stay, take it out of my cold dead. And you know I'm very pro Second Amendment. I want to be on the record. I'm not taking a shot at gun. Conservatives, do not send me hate mail about the gun thing. I'm on your side. Liberals, if you want to send me hate mail about the gun thing, go ahead. No, okay, I'm very pro Second Amendment. My point is despite the fact that I try to defend my rights to keep and bear arms as a law-abiding citizen, I would never stoop to the hypocrisy of telling two other people how to live their private lives, period, point blank. And in this country, we have come to the standard of two legal adults doing legal things and getting married, which is now the law in this country. Tested constitutional law. Whether you agree with it or you don't, it is the law. And we are a nation of law and order. And you can't sit there and defend your Second Amendment rights. Well, whether it's not even about the politics. It's just mind your own goddamn business. Mind your own business. Just mind your own business. Quit. You people who think you're so righteous on your high horse, right, left, or center, coming in and trying to intervene at this level. Just like all you did. You could have sat there in your own private thoughts and go, I don't agree with that. That's stupid. Blah, blah, blah. But you wanted to sit there and you want to attack my faith. You wanted to attack my character. You wanted to obviously attack the character of these two successful, well-respected women who are leaders in their fields, by the way, probably doing their right pinky fingers have probably done more for society than you ever have. Lady who decided to write in. Mind your own goddamn business. Mind your own business. It's disgusting. And it really upset me. I had to say something to Danny and Mary. I'm sorry that I brought you on my podcast, but I felt very passionate about this. And yeah, I don't ever block people for anything, but if you want to be racist, evil, bigoted, and I'm talking like, not that I disagree with you. I don't think disagreement's evil, but I want to be like, if you think, like Russia, you think we can just rape and murder whoever we want and get away with it, gone. If you want to be bigoted, gone. You know what I'm saying? Mind your own business. And that's a lesson the right ought to learn quickly. Because as your generation comes up and my generation comes up into the main voting block of the country, I'm telling you right now, the millennial and the Gen Z generations, we do not play this game.
Nope.
So you boomers and Gen Xers that have real strong feelings about this, good way to lose elections. I will always support the right of these two people to get legally married and live with each other. I don't even know why government is in the business of marriage, quite frankly. It's another reason to take our money. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Am I wrong? Listen, am I over dramatizing this situation? I feel like I'm being restrained because I want to say a lot more.
No, I feel like it's really offensive. So I don't know, what I believe is I think most people genuinely have beliefs that they feel better the world, and it doesn't come from a place of bad intentions. People genuinely believe what they believe, but I have my beliefs, but I don't go put it on random people in the streets. I think that you can disagree, but at some level, that it's disrespectful to comment on someone's post like that or DM someone like that. So you can have your beliefs. You can believe all the bigoted things that you want, but keep it to yourself. Believe what you want.
Yeah, you have the freedom of thought. But it's why? Like, why go out of the way? Like, this, it's not even that this is their people's belief. People are going to believe whatever they want to believe, but they wanted to go out of the way to be shitty.
Yeah.
Like that is the definition of just being shitty.
And what did you want to accomplish? What did you want from that? To ruin someone's day? Congrats.
Well, I would advise these people to pick up their Bible and start working on themselves before they start worrying about two lovely, intelligent ladies celebrating their love for each other. I don't know. If God judges me for that, if I'm put to the grinder, I will die on that hill. I will die on that hill. I don't think I've ever brought religion up ever in 2 years on this show. My faith is my faith. I'm not here to proselyte. I'm not here to preach or pontificate to people, but it's just like, God, it's just like, damn, I didn't put on a uniform. My buddies didn't put on a uniform. Lauren and Jeff didn't put on a uniform for this kind of country. I mean, this is supposed to be the land of the free. My advice to the 15 people that decided to write into me over the last week and personally attack me over this, who are no longer my friends. My friends list a little lighter now. Thank you for showing your true colors. I never want to have anything to do with you ever again. And I hope that your hardened black hearts thaw a little bit, and that you fix yourself and better yourself and realize, there's a lot bigger problems in the world than two people professing their love for each other. And anyway, my heart goes out to, it just shows that bigotry is alive and well in America. It just shows that bigotry is alive and well. And I pray and I hope that it's not the majority opinion of my countrymen, because it's not the country that I fought for. With that, Alyssa, any final thoughts?
Nope. I got them all out.
You got them all out?
Be a nice person. It's not that hard.
Yeah, dude. Just don't be a turd. Don't be a turd. Quit being a turd, America. Come on. We got to do better than this. It's been a long one, but we owed you time and a half for missing last week's. This was episode 7 of the Election Recon podcast. That's Alyssa. I'm Josh, and we'll see you next week.